By now, you've probably used an AI tool like ChatGPT. While it's convenient to have tools like this ready at your fingertips, it's even more natural to converse with your own voice. Recently, we built an AI assistant using Twilio Voice and OpenAI's Realtime API. Here's what interacting with that assistant sounds like. Hello?
Hey there, how can I help brighten your day today?
Can you tell me a joke about owls?
Of course. What do you call an owl who's a magician? Houdini.
We built this assistant using Twilio Voice, OpenAI's Realtime API, and JavaScript, but some of you asked if we could use Python. And yes, we can. Let's build that assistant using Python. Now, before we get started, you will need a few prerequisites to get sorted first. You'll need Python version 3.9 or greater, a Twilio account, along with a Twilio phone number with voice capabilities. You'll also need an OpenAI account and an OpenAI API key that has access to OpenAI's Realtime API. You'll also want ngrok or some other tunneling solution so that Twilio can access your local server. We'll start in the terminal and use pip to install Fast API and Uvicorn to handle the web application side of things. We'll also install python.env to handle environment variables. We'll need WebSockets to interact with both Twilio media streams and OpenAI's Realtime API, as well as Twilio to use the Twilio Voice API. Heading into our code editor, we'll create a .env file where we'll store any environment variables we're using in our application. In this case, it's going to store our OpenAI API key. Replace that with the actual API key that you're using for your application. Next, we'll create main.py and start by loading in our imports. We'll use OS to deal with environment variables, JSON to handle JSON data, base64 to encode and decode our audio, and async IO and WebSockets to work with both the Twilio media streams and OpenAI Realtime APIs over WebSockets. Next, we'll import the web framework Fast API. We've chosen to use Fast API for this application because we found it the most straightforward for working with asynchronous WebSocket requests. You're more than welcome to work with the framework that works best for you. From Twilio, we'll import some objects that help us connect our phone call to the OpenAI Realtime API using Twilio media streams. And finally, we'll import .env, which will allow us to load our environment variables from the .env file. And we'll load those in by calling load_.env. Next, we'll set up some constants for our application. The first is our OpenAI API key, which we get out of an environment variable. And we'll get the port from an environment variable or set it to 50/50. Next, we'll set up a system message. This is something we will pass to the assistant to tell it how to behave. Here, we're telling it it's a bubbly assistant that likes to be helpful and sometimes tell dad jokes and maybe the occasional rickroll. Then we'll set the voice that the AI assistant will use. We're setting this to Alloy, but you have other choices available to you in the OpenAI documentation. Next, we create a list of event types that we want to log. These are events that come from OpenAI that we want to log out to the console so that we can debug our application. Now that our constants are in place, we can initialize a Fast API application instance and check for the presence of an OpenAI API key. Now let's define the routes for our web application. We'll start with a root route. This we can hit in the browser just to make sure everything's working, and it'll return Twilio media stream server is running. Our next route will handle an incoming Twilio phone call at /incoming-call. This route will configure some TWIML that tells Twilio what to do with that incoming call. We'll start by declaring a voice response object. We'll say, please wait while we connect your call to the AI assistant. We'll pause for a second and then tell the caller they can begin talking. Next, we'll configure a connect tag that will connect the Twilio phone call's media stream to our endpoint at /media-stream, which we'll write in a moment. Then we add that connect tag to the response and render out the TWIML. The TWIML that this created is the XML that's appearing on screen right now. Now let's turn our attention to the WebSocket portion of this application at that /media-stream endpoint that we talked about before. The first thing we'll do in here is just log out to the console that the client's connected and then make that actual connection to the Twilio media stream WebSocket. Next, we're going to connect to the OpenAI Realtime API WebSocket at the URL specified here and passing in the API key and the beta flag. Once that's done, we're going to be sending a session update object to configure the assistant. We'll write that later, but for now, just note that we need to send that when the OpenAI WebSocket is connected. We're going to create a variable to store the stream ID so that we can reference that later. Next, we're going to set up a couple of coroutines. One of them is receiving data from Twilio. Again, we'll reference the stream ID so that we can work with it later. And then we'll respond to some events from Twilio. One of them is the start event. And when we get the start event, that just means the stream has started and we need to save that stream ID that we've been referencing. Another kind of event is media, and that means that we have new audio data to send to OpenAI. Here, we'll append that to the audio buffer and send it off to OpenAI. If for some reason our Twilio WebSocket disconnects, we also want to disconnect the OpenAI WebSocket. Next, we'll write the send to Twilio coroutine that will take audio from OpenAI and proxy it back to Twilio media stream. We're going to handle events on this one once again. So the first one is log event types. This is anything that's in that list before. We're just looking at the type, and if we get one of those messages, we'll log it out to the console. The next one is the session updated event type. This is when we send that session update object. We're just going to log out that it was received successfully. And finally, our most important events, the audio delta and delta event types. These are where we've received audio from OpenAI and we need to send it back to Twilio. So we're going to do a bunch of base64 encode, decode, and ultimately decode to UTF-8, package it up in an object with the audio delta, and then we're going to send that back off to Twilio media streams so that the audio can play back to the caller. Next, we'll handle any errors that happen in the processing of the audio data, and then any errors that might have happened when we were sending that to Twilio, anywhere in this coroutine. Next, we'll use async.io.gather to run our coroutines concurrently so that we can send and receive from the two WebSocket connections. Finally, let's turn our attention back to that send session update object I mentioned earlier. This object is used to configure the AI assistant running in OpenAI's Realtime API. Turn detection sets up voice activity detection. The input and output audio format is set to G711 ULAW, which is required for Twilio media streams. Voice sets the voice that will be used by the AI assistant. Instructions influences the AI assistant using that system message that we set up earlier that tells it it's a bubbly assistant that tells jokes occasionally. Modalities allows for both text and audio interactions with the API, and the temperature controls randomness within the assistant. We'll log out to the console that we are sending this session update object, and then we'll actually send the session update object through the OpenAI WebSocket. Our last bit of code here starts the Uvicorn application running at localhost on whatever port is stored in the port constant. Now it's time to test our application. I'll run python main.py, which will start a web server on localhost port 5050. Now we need Twilio to be able to reach localhost port 5050, so I'm going to use ngrok to create an HTTP tunnel that will allow it to access our localhost from a public URL. There are other HTTP tunneling solutions out there, but this one works really well for us and is fairly easy to configure. Feel free to explore and find one that works for you. If we head over to a web browser, we can test that slash route that we wrote by heading to brent.ngrok.io and see the Twilio media stream server is running. Heading over to the Twilio console, I'll go to the phone number that I want to set this application up on, scroll down to where it says a call comes in, and update the URL there to say brent.ngrok.io/incoming-call. Next, we'll scroll down to the bottom of the page and hit the Save Configuration button to save the configuration for our URL. To test our application, I'm going to use the Twilio dev phone. You can find out more about the dev phone from the link appearing on screen or down in the description below this video, but the dev phone is a very handy way to test your Twilio applications. All I need to do is punch in the phone number I would like to call, and then hit the call button, and we can call our app.
Please wait while we connect your call to the AI voice assistant powered by Twilio and the OpenAI Realtime API. Okay, you can start talking.
Hi there, how's it going?
Hey there, how can I help you today?
I was wondering if you could tell me a good owl joke.
Of course. How about this one? What does an owl say when it goes trick-or-treating? Happy Halloween.
Oh, that's really good and very topical. Halloween is coming up soon.
I'm glad you liked it. Halloween is such a fun time of the year. Do you have any exciting plans for it?
Not really. I was wondering though, are you ever going to give me up?
Ooh, I think I know where this is going. And I'm never going to give you up, never going to let you down. Gotcha.
That's perfect. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Shout out to Paul Camp and all of the reviewers that made this blog post possible. If you need help getting this running, check out the blog post link in the description below this video. And while you're down there, drop us a comment and let us know what you want to see next on this channel.